guys, it's Hengist here from House of Hengist Comics, and a big welcome back to the channel, Beansters. I hope you're doing well. Today it's episode 30 from our Blitzkrieg series, The Empire Strikes Back Part 1. First, the news. And we're going to take a look today, really, at the British forces. And I want you to take a quick note of the key position here at Brussels and Leuven, or Leuven. That's where the action's going to be. And this map indicates the initial British positions. Ultimately, we'll see the British moving up from France into Belgium and then onto this the D plan, the dial line, to defend that. The German forces are arrayed as follows, and ultimately, as we know, they are to drive through the Ardennes and basically move on to Boulogne and Calais and catch the British behind. But Lord Gort has the difficult task of bringing the British forces, who have suffered the coldest winter during this phony war, up onto the lines and into action. This was the sort of Gort line. They move into Belgium basically as part of the D plan on the 10th of May, encounter stragglers, refugees, but they're confident. Good quality troops, but they only consist of 10% of the Allied forces. When they arrive, obviously, at the dial line, they find that it isn't fully complete, and the German forces are moving at a rate. A lot of the Belgians who were designed to fall back off the Albert Canal to the dial line are in disarray and surrendering. So let's take a look at the British forces today and see what they've got. Well, we've got a number of companies, basically the Ulster Rifles and the Coldstream Guards. They will be defending here at Leuven. Effectively, their positions are not fully prepared. They aren't fully encamped. It's a very difficult position because it's a narrow river with not a lot of fortifications. So they have been preparing these, but will really be moving into contact to take them on. There are reserve elements such as motorcycle infantry troops. They'll also have Bren carriers and of course some Morris armoured cars, all part of the Enniskillens and Lancers who are to fight at this action. What's critical about this particular battle is it's the first time we really see the 1825 pounder, the derivative and forerunner of the 25 pounder. And we'll also see some Mark 6 tanks. But that gun, the 1825, is a damn good gun and a great piece of field artillery, especially with the horse artillery, except if you've got Major MacDonald commanding them. Anyway, we've also got the German forces today, and they'll consist of a polyglot of 2 infantry companies, one just generally infantry with no support vehicles, basically rifle machine gun with its standard support elements, and they'll have machine guns and mortars. And there's also a motorized infantry company, Motorsiert. They are veterans. They've got heavy machine guns as well, and also 2 of these Geb 150mm guns, which will be quite devastating, as we'll see in the battle. And thirdly, we have an armoured car reconnaissance company consisting of 4 rads and 6 rads, and they're basically the motorised element trying to take the flank, and we'll see that. So let's get into the research and the set and what we did for that. I mean, ultimately, if we look at this map, Leuven's here. This is an action on the 15th and 16th, so we've jumped forward a little bit in time. We've got here this sort of stream or river, the Dial. There are fortifications up by the town and by Leuven itself, and there'll be some action around there. But this is really a railway part behind that river. And as you can see from the set, I've tried to make this as authentic as I can, but I suffered from a lack of maps and intel on this one. So it was quite a creative simulation, but I think based on the actions that we took, it started to get very, very gripping. There's a lot of cover here, a lot of walls, a lot of railway, and of course behind those railway lines there's be bulletproof cover. So it's a good defensive position for the British forces, notably the Ulster Rifles on that flank. However, on the right flank, it's very open. Okay. So let's look at the rules to wargame this. We use ACHTUNG PANZER, but as we've been saying throughout this series, bolt action, battle group, rapid fire, any system, whatever you play is critical, you know, because you know the rules and you can enjoy it. And the most important thing, as I keep trying to say, is try these historical battles. They're very challenging, very entertaining, and then supplement that with a battle deck with fine detail. So without further ado, let's get into the battle action, guys. Conditions are good. It's 6:05 AM. May the 15th, and we've got the German infantry company that deploys first. It's a 10-foot table, but they've concentrated opposite the rail yard. Here on the left flank they've placed two Pak 36s to cover the ford, but there's a problem at that ford. There's a load of civilians and a wagon which has been upturned and is blocking the ford, so vehicles can't cross here. We can also see the Ulstermen. They've dug in along that railway line. That's the main sort of defensive sector. And here's the gendarmerie, which is the central objective. That's got a platoon as well. But immediately the bombardment starts. And the Ulstermen lose 4 men straight away at the gendarmerie. We've also got this artillery basically going ever further down that line, pounding the position. More casualties from the Ulstermen. And effectively the front platoon is to lose 2 bases and start the game effectively with only 7 instead of 9. So it's weakened and depleted. They've only got the scouts there, but they do have heavy machine guns in ambush. Behind the water tower is the main goods yard. That is the primary objective at the rail yard. We've also got, as you can see, the Germans moving up. They're going to go for that wall, which the British have moved forward to, and effectively have dug in their mortars in a commanding position overlooking the rail yard, so they can continue to range in with mortars. Straight away, the British get reserves, and these are Bren carriers, 2 small platoons of 3 vehicles each, and they move forwards towards the third objective, which is the blue Renault. We can also see here the British mortars, the company, they've only got 2 mortars on table. They open fire onto the Germans. They prove to be quite successful. As we get then the German armoured car company arrive, only to find a bottleneck at the stream, which is a real problem. And they've got to remove those civilians to cross this stream. And they're getting most frustrated because they've got a huge amount of firepower. More importantly, they've got a forward air observer who's not in a position to observe at the moment, and that's going to be a real problem. But the German infantry mortars return fire with their mortars, their 81mm, and these basically start to hit the British, who've moved forward, and compel them to withdraw because they're not dug in, and they fall back, allowing the Germans to move forward towards that wall, which is what they wanted as an objective. We also see some SDK-13s arrive and support the forward air observer, and we see tanks arrive from the Inniskillens and effectively 2 Mark 6 tanks. They are also supported by some motorbike infantry that move up as well. And the second platoon of those tanks initially moves to the goods yards, but then is to turn about as the Germans move into those freight cars and start to penetrate. What we've now got is also a delay once again at that ford, and it is really frustrating. So they bring their Kratschützen up with a view to basically get them to go across the stream, but they're right at the back of the forces, and we get the motors arrive as well onto those hills. As you can see, the German armoured cars are trying to use skill checks to get rid of the civilians as the motors run into problems and start to bog on that hill as well. It's not good, but the German Bren carriers move forward. One loses its machine gun and gets pinned as the artillery ranges in again on the Germans and forces them back temporarily, but they move forward again and occupy the wall as the British are dug in. With that wall, they've taken casualties, but they are still very strong, and they're crossing at several parts in this Dial stream. But the Ulstermen have those 3 tanks supporting them. When we get the Coldstream Guards arrive, who move straight towards the railway station and move in, and also towards the gendarmerie as well. So they've had 2 platoons arrive as well. Here the frustration mounts with the Germans, who at one point were considering opening fire but didn't. It's getting really quite frustrating, and now we see the Bren carriers move forward again aggressively, trying to engage, but you know, the Kratschützen aren't in a position to return fire, but nothing's really being effective as the SIGs basically get into a position where they're starting to dig in and prepare to fire. Their infantry moving forward towards the central position on the stream. Major MacDonald's arrived. He's got his artillery and is shaking, trying to find this suitable cover, but he needs to direct his artillery as the Coldstream Guards move in to the railway station, and they're supported now by the 2nd platoon of those Mark 6 tanks with the 303 Vickers with them. eventually, the civilians start to be cleared, and the Germans are nearly in a position to jump off and cross that stream. They've taken out one armoured car and damaged another. But a lorry with some machine guns is also going to support them. As you can see from this view, this is what is approaching that flank. Morris's, however, arrive, and they've got those boys anti-tank rifles, so against machine guns they're, you know, anti-tank 4 versus anti-tank 2, so very good. But the Coldstream Guards are strung out, and or in the buildings they're trying to occupy them as well, as the tanks basically move forward to stop the German motor circuit crossing at the stream. Meanwhile, at the goods yard, the Ulstermen are putting up a courageous defence, exchanging fire with the Germans behind that wall, and they continue to exchange fire, supported by the mortars, and hold. The SIGs now are in a position where they can start to fire, and this is a concern as the Kradschützen finally get towards that fence line. The armoured cars start to move across and open fire, you know, shredding basically some of those Bren carriers in the process, just with machine gun fire. Here the motor cert just about to start crossing the river. When they get in finally an airstrike, they don't drop their bombs. They've only got one bombing run and just strafe, killing 8 Coldstream Guardsmen in the process, and then fly off, causing concern for the commanders. When we now see an express train from Leuven and a German assault against the Ulstermen, who've been defending that railway line, and this is to be a very decisive battle. The Ulstermen do the best they can. They take casualties from the onrush, but then in defensive fire, supported by those Vickers-like tanks, they shred the Germans and basically cause 20 casualties and drive them off, some being left on the other side of the wall. It's a decisive defeat and critical. The guardsmen, they're trying to fan out because they know artillery is coming as that express train whooshes past the water tower. We've got some infantry now having cleared all of that from the guards, but they are now sort of penned in those buildings and are vulnerable targets to that artillery. The Bren carriers are being pushed back, driven back by the onslaught of suppressing fire from the vehicles as the motor start to cross. We've got those Morrises, but they can't really hit. They're at long range. We've also got basically the first SIG rounds land and basically blow holes in the concrete, and another air attack, which this time fires its cannons against a Morris and hits it, immobilizing it, destroying its tires, as the Kradschützen effectively start to cross in their displacement phase, or stormtrooper, cross that stream and start to flank. We've got all sorts of chaos as the Coldstream Guards try and fan out. The train is trying to race off the board to Varv, and the Pioneers are in the centre as the SIGs come under counter battery fire from MacDonald, who basically pins them temporarily. But the armoured cars are now across, a huge weight of them, and they basically start ripping holes in the Bren carriers with machine gun and 20mm fire from the 6 rads and some of the 4 rads. There's only 2 4 rads with 20mm, but it's enough. And now basically the Germans opt to shoot off the Ulstermen, who eventually break. They've taken 80% casualties holding that railway line, but it's been decisive as more artillery lands now, starting to kill those that are inside the railway station. Luckily the civilians have been evacuated as the train basically full steam gets out of there, and we can see Morrises now being destroyed by 20mm and machine gun fire. The Kradschützen now moving up. They've now crossed the bank and are going to take out the lone Bren carrier, which has just been sitting there all day, defiantly refusing to surrender and firing its pistol. We get 20mm fire now directed at a Mark 6, taking out the command tank, which means the other tanks are leaderless now and have to fall back. As you can see, the casualties are mounting in the railway station, which is being reduced. But the Ulsters have pulled their mortars back and are beginning to dig in. They still have that heavy machine gun fire, and they've got those Pioneers there to support them as well. They're confident on that flank, but can the Guards hold on the right flank? Well, what can we say in postscript other than that this is beautifully poised for the second part of this game with only 5 turns left. Both sides are in a little bit of difficulty. This is a great photograph from Leuven at the date in question. I really like that. Recommend this, the BEF in France, 1939 to 40. and I think that's excellent. And also a quick shout out to Cranston Fine Art. I love their work, always trying to basically promote it. Brilliant war art, and suggest if you're looking for that, go and get it. Ultimately, never forget, guys, the fallen. So this is Blitzkrieg. Stay safe, stay lucky, and bye for now.